All right, what's up? Welcome to QnA, the post-game edition. We're going to talk about some questions you guys had after the game. We're going to get into those questions. First question comes from Buckeye Steve, who says, this might be a silly question, but I'm honestly asking, do you think it's possible to break Shedeur out of his spin cycle habit in the offseason by having a concentrated period of training camp in which the starting D-line just blitzes him over and over again? This can be drilled out of him, or do you think this is just part of his game or something that he falls back to from time to time? I think it's more the latter. I think it's just something he falls back to from time to time, but he's getting out of that habit. It's honestly not his worst habit, to be honest. Like, I think that's the most correctable habit he has. And quite frankly, I think he learned his lesson in Baltimore. Like, he spun in Baltimore. He thought it would work. It didn't work. It resulted in disaster, and he has seemingly been less incentivized to do so since then. So, credit to Shedeur for working on that. I don't think it's such a problem as we talk right now. I mean, he's only taken like 4 or 5 sacks since that game. So I don't think it's such a problem that you need to go to that length to try to fix it. The bigger issue is the pocket drifting for Shedeur. I'm interested to see what the film looks like for it. As of recording this video, it is Sunday night, so I have not seen the All-22 yet, but I will see it as of Monday. So depending on when this video comes out, my film breakdown's either up or not, and refer to that for his pocket drifting and stuff like that. But that's more important for him because it affects his ability to be on time. And when he does fix that drift, I think he does look a lot better as a quarterback. So yeah, I don't think the spin cycle thing is that bad of a problem. I think he's fixed that, or at least addressed that over the last few weeks. There are times where it pops back up, bad habits are hard to stomp out completely, but it's not the problem that it's been, or that I thought it would be outside of the Baltimore game, so kudos to Shedeur for working on it. Phil says this, does Stefanski get at least one more year with these rookies behind center, or would it be better to have a new quarterback and a new head coach? Just can't say for sure if a new coach would even want Sanders or Gabriel. It's like putting a relief pitcher in while the previous pitcher has the bases loaded with 0 outs. I think you can't really worry about that. The coach will make do with whatever is on the roster, right? It's not like you're hiring a new GM. So I don't know if you have to be too worried about that. Would a coach want Sanders? Would a coach want Gabriel? I don't know, but if Andrew thinks there's a lot to work with one of those guys, then, they're going to get the memo there. As far as do you go new coach, new quarterback? Here's what I want to know. Are you giving Kevin extra time because you believe in Kevin, or are you giving Kevin an extra year to be polite? I'm not really interested to give him the extra year to be polite, to confirm some things. Like, if you don't believe in Kevin, you should get rid of Kevin, right? Like, it's at that point. Don't give him the lame duck year. If you're just trying to be polite and not fire him ahead of his contract, I see that as a waste of time. So, if you think that there's any possibility of your firing Kevin Stefanski before the end of next season, if you think that is a remote possibility, you just need to go ahead and fire Kevin right now, right? Just let it go. Because what you don't want to be is in the situation you were with Hugh Jackson, where you have a quarterback that you took early in the draft, and you're exposing that quarterback to like 8 different offensive coordinators because you decided to fire the guy who was a part of drafting that guy like 3 months into the season. You know what I mean? Let's avoid that scenario entirely, right? So if the Browns are convinced that Kevin Stefanski's the next Andy Reid and they're willing to sit through the lows to get to the highs with Kevin and they're truly bought in, then yeah, keep Kevin, sure. If they're bought in on that image of Kevin. If they're not, and they think they could fire Kevin in the middle of next year, then you're wasting everybody's time keeping him for longer than this season. That's my takeaway on that, right? Next question comes from CPL Mud, who says this. What are your expectations for Shedeur next week versus the Bears? Love your coverage. Keep up the great work. Honestly, I just want to see his positive progress continue. No high expectations. The Bears are a really good team. I'm not going to be in there like, oh, he must beat the Bears in order to stop the Browns. I'm not going to do that to him, right? My expectation for Shedeur is to continue to look like he's making the progress that he's been making week to week. And at the end of the year, we'll see where that progress is. We'll see where we feel about that progress versus what we feel about what we might be able to get in the draft. And we can have those conversations at the end of the year. But for Shedeur, the expectation is just to continue to try to get better every week. Some weeks it's going to be big jumps. Some weeks it's going to be little jumps. Maybe even a week you're going to get a couple of steps back, right? But then you just want to see continuous progress, and you want to feel by the end of the season that Shedeur is much better than what you had hoped he would be by the end of this year from his rookie year by what you saw in training camp. That's really all you want to be with a rookie, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at with Shedeur. Just continue your progress, continue to look, make forward progress in your career. It would mean a lot if you could have a good game versus a good team, right? Because that hasn't happened yet. But so far, that's really it, right? I don't need him to set the world on fire. I don't need him to throw for like 5 touchdowns or something like that. Just continue your progress in the positive direction, and we'll assess where we are at the end of the season. If we get Mendoza, do you think you could keep Shedeur on the roster next year? If not, what could his trade value be? Oh boy, we're gonna have a lot of conversations about this in the offseason. We really are. So let's say the Browns are in a position to get one of the 2 quarterbacks that they might covet, right? Right now, there's a consensus amongst draft people that like Mendoza, Dante Moore, top 5 grades, right? So let's say the Browns are in a position to get one of those 2 guys, and they do take one of those 2 guys. Can Shedeur stay on the roster after you do that? I think so. I am going to admit I'm in the minority here, right? What I believe apparently is a fringe opinion. Everybody else kind of defaults to you can't keep Shedeur if you draft a rookie next year. I think you can. I think Shedeur can handle it. I think the locker room can handle it. I think you can find a coach that can handle it. If it is Kevin, the one thing about Kevin, he's rock solid when it comes to dealing with like outside pressure. He doesn't give a fuck about any of it. So I think he could handle it if it's Kevin. We'll see if that's the case. I think Andrew can handle it. I think everybody that matters can handle it. Will Browns fans handle it well? No. Okay. But let me tell you what Browns fans aren't going to handle well either. If you trade Shedeur Sanders, Browns fans aren't going to handle that well either. You know what I mean? Like the can of worms that is Shedeur Sanders has already been opened. Like we just got to be honest about where we are. The can of worms that is Shedeur has been opened already, which means it's not going away. You could trade Shedeur, it's not going to go away. People are going to be mad that you traded him. People are going to compare everything that quarterback does to what Shedeur does because you traded him, and people are going to automatically default to this being Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson all over again until the rookie steps up and proves all of that wrong. Like there is this idea that you could just make the Shedeur stuff disappear or make the noise that's going to be associated with this team and Shedeur disappear, but that's not going to happen. The Browns and Shedeur Sanders and the Sanders fan base are always going to be somewhat connected because we're the team that drafted Shedeur. And because we're the team that drafted Shedeur, whatever happens next in Shedeur's career, even if it's away from the Cleveland Browns, will always be judged across from what the Browns' current quarterback situation is compared to what Shedeur is, right? It's just one of those things. You're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to make it disappear, right? And it's not going to go anywhere. It's just here to stay. But here's the good news, right? A lot of us might get flashbacks to Deshaun Watson being traded for it and Baker Mayfield being on the roster, and some people telling you that the Browns are going to keep both of them. And that was crazy to think. This is not the same situation, though. right? Deshaun Watson and Fernando Mendoza, those aren't the same thing. I would certainly hope that's not the same thing. And Baker Mayfield and Shedeur Sanders, not the same thing. One, Shedeur seems like a very mature person. I would argue more mature than Baker was at that point in his life. Obviously, Baker has matured since then, but more mature than Baker was at that point in his life where all of this went down. So I don't think Shedeur is going to have a poor response to that. I also don't think that the rookie that you would bring in would have a poor response to that. There's also the expectation difference, right? When the Browns traded for Deshaun Watson was going to be the day one starter as long as the suspension was up. That's a little different to what the Browns have going on right now, right? The Browns might not even want to play the guy that they draft in the first round if that's the route they go down in the first year of their career. So they might want a bridge quarterback. Now, I know you heard reports that it's going to be Deshaun Watson, but I doubt it. I seriously doubt it's going to be Deshaun Watson, because if they seriously thought Deshaun Watson could be a bridge quarterback, they would be playing Deshaun Watson right now. Like, seriously. Think, like, those reports about Deshaun Watson being the bridge quarterback, those come from Deshaun Watson's people. It's the same spin they've been trying to throw out for years. The Browns have no interest in starting him. If they thought he could be a bridge quarterback, he would be out there. They would be testing that theory out right now. They're not interested in testing that theory out for obvious reasons. I think Shedeur has a chance to be a bridge quarterback, because if you're Andrew Berry and you think you can handle the situation, and you think Shedeur Sanders can handle the situation, and you think that the person you draft is going to be emotionally mature enough to handle the situation, as tough as it might be, you can handle the situation. You have a situation on your hands, and I said the word a lot, but you have an opportunity on your hands to double dip, which is, let's say this is a Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers situation, and the quarterback that you draft is Phillip Rivers and Shedeur is Drew Brees, right? We all know, if you don't know what happened and why I'm using this as a scenario, Drew Brees once played for the Chargers. The Chargers also drafted Phillip Rivers while they had Drew Brees, and then Drew Brees hit free agency, went to the Saints. Now, this could be better than that if you're the Browns, because you could say, hey, let's say Shedeur looks like a bona fide starter, but behind the scenes, you're extremely happy with what you're seeing with Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, and you want to play them as soon as possible next year. Then you can trade Shedeur for a lot of draft assets, use those assets to build around your young quarterback. Let's say the reverse happens and Shedeur ends up being really good, but Mendoza doesn't, or Moore doesn't, right? Like, let's say one of those guys aren't good, but you still got Shedeur on the roster, and Shedeur ends up being a starting quarterback in the league. Well, you can trade the guy that you took in the first round early enough to where you can at least get back probably a second or a third for that selection, and then use that to build around Shedeur Sanders. Or let's say they're both good, but you like Shedeur better, so you pick Shedeur and you trade Mendoza or Moore, and you get a bunch of assets for that guy. There's a lot of ways where you can really hit a fortunate lick if you're the Browns, if you're willing to live with some of the uncomfortableness that might be created primarily outside of the building. And I think that's a worthwhile thing to look forward to. I think the dynamic of it would be a lot more simplified, right? It's not like Shedeur would be taken over from like a third round pick. It's a first round pick. People will understand that. And I think the prospect of Shedeur being traded somewhere that actually wants him would be appealing to the people who only care about Shedeur's career. So I think you can get a win-win here. It takes courage. It's not going to be the obvious thing to do, but I think there's a win-win here. Some people are going to hate me for this suggestion. Some people are going to see what I mean by this suggestion, but I think Shedeur should be on the roster next year, regardless of what you do in the draft. Like, he's played well enough to where I think that is absolutely something you should do. Everybody else wants to trade him. I think somebody's going to have to play quarterback next year in the meantime, right? The Browns want to take this slow, work on the development, much like they did with Shedeur this year. Then somebody's going to have to play quarterback in the meantime. Why shouldn't that guy be Shedeur? I'd much rather it be him than Deshaun Watson or Dylan Gabriel. I think there's some upside to it. Again, would it be the funnest thing to cover? No. Will it be fun for some fans outside of the building? No. But could it end up being the best thing for both parties involved? The Browns and Shedeur Sanders eventually? I think so. I really do. So I think that Shedeur is mature enough to see the upside there, and that the Browns are business focused enough to see that too. So we'll see. We're going to continue with these questions, but real quick, I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Staples Clive has said Tommy Rees worth keeping if Kevin goes. His play calling has helped the offense improve. My favorite thing about what Tommy Rees has brought to the offense, and look, there's been some bad play calls. I mean, if you're upset about the whole quarterback sneak thing, not the quarterback sneak, but the whole Wildcat thing, I mean, I got news to break to you. That's Tommy Rees is doing that, right? I don't have an issue with it. So, I'm not bothered by it. I think Tommy Rees has done a fine job calling plays. But it is interesting, like when plays happen that people like, it's like, oh, Tommy Rees, he's such a good play caller. But when things happen they don't like, it's all of a sudden Kevin calling the plays again. But yeah, I think that Tommy Rees has done a good job. You know what I mean? I'm not bothered by some of those things. With Tommy, what I feel like has been the most impressive thing with him and the thing that I like the most about him, he has a good read for how to adjust his approach to whoever the quarterback is, which is something that I thought Kevin has always struggled with, right? Kevin struggled to adjust his style to different quarterbacks. I think Tommy Rees has a better grasp on how to take the Kevin style and take what Kevin can input to the offense as somebody who does have a lot of experience and then mold that to whoever's playing quarterback. I think he does a better job at doing that. And I think it's showing with Shedeur. I think he's found a nice rhythm with Shedeur. Some of the hurry up stuff and the other stuff that he's added to the offense. So yeah, I've been pretty happy with Tommy Rees's job as the play caller on offense. As an offensive coordinator, there's still some stuff that bothers me with the run game that I don't think is going anywhere with Tommy Rees. But that stuff can improve over time. Luke Venez says, do you think if Shedeur shows enough for the rest of the season, you would feel better about rolling into next season with him rather than some of the top prospects in this draft? If Shedeur shows enough this season to win like 2 or 3 more games and the Browns aren't in position to take a quarterback, I'm fine with that outcome, right? Because that proves that, okay, Shedeur has something. We could go into 2026 with Shedeur. But if Shedeur does not show enough that can translate into wins, and I know that, I like to be process-oriented here, but the NFL is a results-based business, and you don't keep your job in the NFL based on the process, right? We talked about this with Dylan Gabriel. You keep your job based on wins and losses. So if Shedeur can produce wins and that pulls the Browns out the position to draft the quarterback, then yeah, let's roll with Shedeur. He clearly showed something enough to pull this team up and double their win total as the quarterback. If Shedeur can't produce the wins and the Browns have a top pick, well, then that is what it is. That is the business of the NFL. So that's how that's going to work. And I think Shedeur understands this because Dion understands this and everybody around Shedeur understands this. So yeah, if he shows enough, and I'm going to have to emphasize, showing enough means winning games. It does not mean putting up nice numbers exclusively. It means winning games. If he wins the games that pulls the Browns out of that draft position, I'm saying 5 wins would pull the Browns out of range for a quarterback, then yeah, let's roll with Shedeur for next year. I ain't got no problem with that because he earned it with winning the games. If it doesn't happen and we're talking about what should have happened for him to get to that win total and, how he really should have this, but he doesn't have the wins and the Browns do have the draft position, then hey, man, it is what it is. Right? The Browns get into the draft with 3 wins. They get the number 2 or number 1 overall pick. They're going to take a quarterback. Right? If the Browns have a top 5 pick, They might take a quarterback. If the Browns have the 7th pick in the draft or the 8th pick in the draft because they went 5-12, they're not taking a quarterback. Right? So, yeah, if Shedeur does enough, and I think it's important to emphasize, that means win. Because that's the only currency that really matters in the NFL, right? Guys don't stay in the league because they have a high completion percentage. Guys don't stay starter in the NFL because you got a high PFF grade. Guys don't stay starters in the NFL because their EPA per play is really nice. Guys don't stay starters in the NFL because they have a high QBR. All of these metrics help us understand quarterback play. But trust and believe the metric that quarterbacks are going to be measured by, at the end of the day, wins and losses. It's not a quarterback stat, but it's basically a quarterback stat when you look at it that way, right? Because it affects everything. You win games, you keep your job. You lose games, you don't. Even if the franchise has invested a ton in you, you get more time, obviously. But if you're not winning games, you sit in the bench, right? Deshaun Watson got 2 years? The Browns invested everything in him. He got 2 years before he sit in the pine. Baker Mayfield got 4 years? Didn't win enough games that last year. They traded him for Deshaun. That's the currency that matters in the NFL, right? Got to win games. And I think that's important to emphasize, right? It's nice to show some flashes. It's nice to show some things on tape. And those things will be considered as far as whether the Browns trade Shedeur or not. But if the decision to not draft the quarterback, that's going to have to do with wins and losses. Because it's going to have to do with draft position. The Browns are in position to take a quarterback, they're going to do it. If they're not going to do it. Shedeur has the ability to affect that outcome by doing his best to win games. And if they can win 2 more games, Shedeur is going to have an opportunity to be the quarterback in 2026. If they can't, it's up in the air. That's the stakes for the season for him, man. It's the reality. Michael says this, hey Q, I know it seems like the Browns are destined to pick in the top 5, but let's say you surprise us and fall out. Do you think there's any chance the Browns draft a defender? Do you think our second round might go defense? I think Barry is all about value. I feel like fans would go nuts if we don't go wide receiver and O-lineman. Appreciate the answer. Andrew Barry does go best player available, but he always drafts need. You know what I mean? So the way that Andrew Barry approaches it is, if it's not a position that they have a weakness at, he's not just going to randomly draft a player there, right? First round pick he drafts Jed Wills. Browns had a need at offensive tackle, and there was an argument that maybe he might be the best player on the board. Got to remember the prospects on Jed Wills was much different than what he ended up being. Joe Thomas loved the guy coming out of Alabama. But Jed Wills, they draft him. It doesn't work out, but they draft the tackle there, right? The Browns aren't just going to randomly draft. They have a plan here. Yeah, they like to go best player available, but it's always a player in a position of need. Mason Graham was a player in a position of need, defensive tackle, right? You lost Dalvin Tomlinson. Well, you were going to lose Dalvin Tomlinson. You get Mason Graham. So they're going to draft a position of need. I don't think they're randomly going to draft something they're strong at. I don't think they're going to draft a linebacker or something like that in the first 2 rounds because that's the best player available. So I don't think we have to worry about that. I think they're going to lean towards taking an offensive lineman and a wide receiver just because the value for offensive linemen really dips after the first round. So I'd expect that second first-round pick to be prioritized towards offensive linemen. And then wide receiver is definitely going to be hit with either that second first-round pick or the top of the second-round pick. And look, if the Browns aren't in range for a quarterback, gotta imagine that the Browns are going to trade back. You know what I mean? If they're not in the top 5, they fall out the range of a quarterback, I have to imagine they trade back so they can fill more holes on their roster. So Daryl C says this, I'm sure a lot of folks will overreact one way or another to Shedeur's performance. However, if Shedeur can do that against the Bears, Bills, and Steelers, it'd be hard to deny his upside. You can only pass the test you take, and I believe he passed today. What do you think? Yeah. I think you take into account that it was the Titans, and he does need to play like that against some better teams. But you only pass the test you're in front of, and I thought he passed his test. And yeah, if he can play like that against the Bears, Bills, and Steelers, and that translates to a win, that's going to make a difference, right? Because the biggest thing Shedeur could do to stop the Browns from taking the quarterback is win games. That's the biggest thing he can do. If he does that, then he's going to make a better argument for himself to be the quarterback going forward. But also, he's going to make it harder for the Browns to get another quarterback. So that's what he has to do. He has to go out there and try to win games as much as possible. It's unfortunate what happened to him at the end of this game where that opportunity got taken from him. But, if you're Shedeur, that's really what you got to do. You got to win some games here, right? Get to 5 wins, get 2 more wins this season. It's doable. It certainly is, right? The Bengals, Steelers, you can win those games. You get to those 5 wins, you're probably going to be successful in stopping the Browns and getting a quarterback. If the Browns get to 4 wins, they're probably going to be in the top 3 still. So be interested to see. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.